Today's going to be a fun day in my 3D print journey and running a 3D print business. If you guys have been following me for a little while, you know I've been trying to decide on another printer. I currently have two Bambu Lab A1s and one A1 Mini, and the one I picked up today just happened to be pure luck. I was going to Micro Center just to go up there and browse and found the one I've been waiting for. So I'm really excited to show you guys what that is. Now this will be my first non-Bambu Lab printer aside from the Creality Ender 3 V2 that I started with. Now when I walked into Micro Center, they've had this printer on display showing that they have it, but they've been completely out of stock for the last several weeks. But today they had one sitting underneath there that was in stock, and I picked it up real quick. So let me show you guys what printer I got. This honky boy right here, the Elegoo Centauri Carbon. I actually have this on pre-order that I ordered through Elegoo back at the end of April. It still hasn't shipped yet. It's not scheduled to ship until the end of July. But seeing this there at Micro Center for about $329, I know it's about $30 more than through Elegoo, but I couldn't pass it up. I was too excited to try it out. So I figured I would take it home and see how it goes. I'm gonna go ahead and get this unboxed. I'm not gonna bore you guys with that, but then we'll go through the complete setup process and how it actually prints. It actually wasn't that long ago that I was unboxing my first Bambu Lab A1. And now to have three of those and now a fourth printer, pretty cool. So the unboxing of this is pretty straightforward. Obviously you have your main unit here. You have the glass top that's on the very top of the packaging. And then there's another box inside the printer with your power cord, spool holder, screen, and your tubes and other accessories. Now it comes with about 4 Allen keys and 2 screwdrivers. So the first thing to do is to actually unscrew the bed. So I will go ahead and do that. Man, and honestly, for the price point, this thing feels like a quality printer. And to me, it looks better than the P1S. So you just remove the screws from here, here, and then one in the very back. All right, so next up, we are just going to install the screen. We take the spool holder, put that on there. Now we're just going to take the power cord, install it in the back of the unit and plug it in. Now this is obviously not where this printer is going to live, but it's going to live for right now because I'm working on a video redoing my print room. So that's kind of a mess. So I'm going to leave it right here for right now. And then that thing will power right on. It says to ensure the chamber is free from foreign objects. Isn't this whole thing foreign? And now we're just going to let it run its initial calibration. I was loading the filament. I actually missed this piece of styrofoam, which was sitting in here, which is kind of hard to see unless you get back here. So make sure you remove that styrofoam that's sitting in there. All right, the self-calibration is complete. Now I'm just going to set up Wi-Fi real quick. All right, now it's going to have me run a firmware update. Then it's going to have you adjust the nozzle temperature for whatever filament you're using. Since I'm using PLA, we're going to do it to 220. Went ahead and got it loaded up with the filament provided for the initial benchy test. Go ahead and hit load. We're going to go to the local files here and just select the benchy, the side A of the build plate, and hit print. All right, print time was 15 minutes and 7 seconds. All right, so let's take a look at the benchy, and just taking a close-up look at it, I have no complaints. There's really no major issues or anything. Seemed to come out very well. And just for reference, this was the Elegoo. This was actually the benchy off one of my A1s from Bambu. And honestly, I would say it's slightly better on the Elegoo, but not by much. I mean, these two are basically the same. So again, A1 from Bambu and the Elegoo right here. So pretty happy with that first print. Now this printer does purge out the back, as you can see here, but Elegoo did something really cool and provided a waste bucket that's preloaded that you can print out. And it is basically a miniature version of this printer, which is really cool. So I'm gonna get that printed out as the second print on this thing. And because I've always wanted a golden toilet, but it's a little out of my price range, I'm going to print out the poop bucket for this printer using UJoy Bio's gold metallic filament. So if you go into the file folder right here, it's gonna be the first one. We're just going to go ahead and send it to print. Looking about 2 hours for this until it's finished. Just so you guys can get an idea of the sound difference between when it's open like this and closed. This is I'm about an arm's length away, and the microphone is on me, but it's about an arm's length away. Now we'll go ahead and put the lid on. And then shut the door. So significantly quieter with everything shut. And just like that, it's done. Best looking golden toilet I've ever seen. I just loosen the screws on the back here. Slides right in. So I have about 24 print hours with the Elegoo Centauri Carbon so far, and it has been great. I have really no complaints, especially when it comes to the print quality of this. I've thrown a wide variety of different types of PLA at this, and every one it has done great. I did print the riser here that you can see. Not that it necessarily needs it as far as for the chamber with PLA, because I did print PLA with everything closed and didn't have any issues with the heat building up in there. It does say if you're printing with PLA or PETG, it recommends having the top off and possibly the door open, but because of the noise, it is a little loud with everything open. I just had the door shut and I didn't have any issues with it, but printing off this riser will help with that because it does have vents if that's something you're worried about, but it also prevents the tubing that's in there going to the print head from actually rubbing on here, and then it gets rid of that tight bend, so when you're loading the filament it's going to be a little bit easier to push that through. But as far as just the standard build plate that comes with this, I've had no issues with it. Everything comes off really easy. I've had no issues with any type of PLA that I've used sticking, especially when I'm using support or brim. Everything comes off really easy. Like I can just pick it up and pull it off. I haven't had to mess with bending the plate too much or anything. It literally just picks right up off the plate. Nothing has shifted off the plate or anything like that so far. So this has been a great plate so far. And if you're like me and have several A1s from Bamboo and have different plates for that, like I have the cryo grip plate, that will actually work on the Centauri Carbon. So you don't have to go purchase more build plates. As long as it's a 256 by 256 millimeter plate, it will fit in here, which is amazing. And one thing I do like about this, it is a little bit easier to put the plate in place. Unlike the Bamboo Lab A1 where those back bumpers are kind of hard to find because they're really thin. The ones on the Carbon here are a little bit more pronounced, so it is easier to get this in place a little bit better than the A1. I did forget that I have the anti-vibration feet for this thing, so I don't have them on here yet. But once I get this moved over to the print room, I will put these on and see if it does make a difference. I do have this sitting on just a Husky workbench that's adjustable on wheels, and it did vibrate this quite a bit when it was really doing stuff at high speed. So I'm interested to see how those would change that at all, if anything. Obviously, at this price point, this printer cannot be perfect. So I found a couple of areas where there's some room for improvement, just so you can be aware of. I'm going to start with the Elegoo Slicer program. They do have that you can download for Windows and Mac. I use it on my Mac computer. And if you're familiar with Orca Slicer or even Bamboo Studio, it's kind of similar in layout. It does look a little bit different, but pretty much the same. Some options are in different places, so that's something that you'll have to get used to, but it's easy to find those options. One thing that I'm not a fan of compared to Bamboo Studio anyway is at least the filament presets. In Bamboo Studio, it already has presets for Polymaker, eSun, Sunlu, and several other filament companies that are out there. And so all you have to do is select whichever one you have, and it already has the presets for that filament. Whereas in Elegoo Slicer, you're limited to Elegoo's filament or generic. So you will have to probably make some tweaks depending on what you're using. You can save the presets, but it's just an extra step that you'll have to do every time you change a different filament, because I do like using the manufacturer's recommendations as far as the print settings. And in Bamboo Studio, a lot of times you don't have to do that, but with this, you'll probably have to make some tweaks, but you can save those. But that is just something to be aware of. So if you're using strictly Elegoo filament, you're good to go. But if you're like me and have a ton of different brands, you may have to tweak the filament settings in there and then save those presets. or you can go ahead and use Orca Slicer. I haven't used that yet, so I don't know if they have filament presets for the Elegoo Centauri Carbon yet, but that is another option that's a little bit more popular. The only other software related thing that you'll want to be aware of is there's no mobile app for this. So you do have Bamboo Handy app, which you can basically use to send stuff to the printers. But what I mainly use it for is monitoring the prints, and it does notify me when the print's done. So that way I know, hey, the printer's free. I can go swap out the plates and start a new print. With the Elegoo, so far as of recording this, there is no mobile app, and I don't know if there's one in the works or not, but that is something to be aware of if you like to be able to check on the printer from your phone. As of right now, I'm not aware of a way to do it, especially with an app from Elegoo. Now, moving on to the printer itself, as far as cons, there's only been a few of them that I have noticed so far, and it might not be that big of a deal to you. And I think they've already addressed a couple of them that I'm going to mention. Now, I know there's different batches that these are coming out with. The newer ones are coming out with different lighting and a slot for the AMS system. This one isn't part of that. So this has the original light, which is pretty much worthless. If you're familiar with the Bamboo Lab A1 or A1 Mini and a light that's on there, those lights are garbage. He really doesn't make a difference. And unfortunately, this one I have here doesn't have the updated light. It just has the regular one. And then as far as the AMS system, some of them are coming out with the slot on the side over here where the filament roll is for the AMS system that is supposed to be rolling out later this year. So, but the one I have isn't part of the newer batches, but I'm interested to see how they're going to integrate those with the batches like this that don't have those. I don't know if they're maybe going to send out an LED light that's easily installed in replace of the original one, and then how to actually put the AMS slot on these older units. Not sure how that's going to work. I might reach out to Elegoo to see how they're going to address that. But if you haven't received your printer yet in the pre-order, you're probably in luck that you're probably going to receive the ones that are updated, so you won't even have to worry about that. Really, the only other con that I've found so far, and this will probably be fixed with the multicolor system that's coming out, is just the filament loading and unloading. It's a little bit of a process, and it does have a long way to go through the tube until you get to the print head. And like I said, unless you have the riser installed, if you have the glass sitting flat, there is a pretty sharp bend at the end that you really have to push it to get it through. And it just takes a little while to actually do its round, instead of like the A1 to where it just goes straight to the cutter and then back and then pulls it out. This does this like weird kind of goes around the whole thing and takes a minute, and then you're able to back out the filament. So it just takes a little bit longer when you're running the single color prints that it's set up for right now to load and unload the filaments. But I'm sure that will change once the multicolor system comes out. Now, this next thing I'm about to say, I can't really say it without getting a Michael Scott meme in my head, but we'll say it anyway. When you're loading the filament into the sensor here on the side, it is actually flat and it doesn't stick out. So it's kind of hard to find the hole to stick the filament in.
That's what she said. Don't you dare.
So I find myself struggling, especially if you have these things stacked against the wall or you have a bunch of these next to each other. It might be hard to actually reach that and find the hole where it needs to go.
That's what she said.
But once you get it in there, it's easy to get it through the tube and stuff like that. But that's the only other thing I've noticed when unloading and loading filament. Now, the printer did come with a USB stick, and it does go on the bottom front of the printer. You'll just want to be careful with that and not accidentally bump into that a bunch because you could break it. I do like the Bamboo Lab A1s where they come with the SD cards and they sit in there flush. That way you don't have to worry about accidentally hitting that. So just another thing to be aware of, the USB stick does stick out at the bottom. So just be careful when working around that you don't actually bump into that and break it off. So moving on to the pros of this thing, and there are a lot of them. Obviously, the first one being the price, $299 if you buy through Elegoo. I bought this from Micro Center for $329, but even at that price point, that you really can't beat that. And I don't know how they're making this thing at that price, but let's hope they keep it like that and don't raise it. But for that price, you're getting a great Core XY printer that's fully enclosed. And what I like about the enclosure is it is all metal. So it feels like a quality printer. It does have a glass top, a glass door. So it is heavy. It does have some weight to it. It's definitely not light. So that's something to be aware of depending on where you're going to set it. You definitely don't want to put it on a flimsy shelf or anything like that because it does have some weight, but it just makes it feel like it's a more high quality product. And I really prefer the glass doors over the plexiglass just because I feel like that's going to keep the temperatures in there a little bit more stable. And it just makes it feel like it's a higher quality printer. And that door opens and closes perfectly. It magnetically shuts, and I've had no issues with that. And then obviously the print quality is definitely a pro so far, at least with the PLA filaments I've thrown at it. And the ease of use of this thing definitely goes in the pro column as well, from taking it out of the box, only having to remove 3 screws and a little bit of foam, and then you're ready to do the full calibration and then honestly start printing. Definitely easy to take out of the box and get it up and going. So at the end of the day, my initial impressions on this machine are definitely positive. I am really excited to put this thing through the paces and see how it does long term. Again, hopefully Elegoo does catch up on their production and you guys are able to get your printers sooner than later if you have those on pre-sale, or maybe you're lucky like me and can find these at a local micro center. But definitely if you're on the market or even on the fence, I would just say go ahead and order one sooner than later. And hopefully they do ramp up production on the parts that are available for this, just in case there are some issues down the road. And I'm sure at some point we'll start seeing some third-party companies coming out with other upgrades and parts for this as well. So really excited for that. But if you guys like this content, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It's totally free for you and does help out the channel. And you'll be able to follow me on my journey in 3D printing and running a 3D print business and getting more experience on this. And I'll share my experience, good and bad, as I go through it with the Elegoo Centauri Carbon. So until the next video, go ahead and check out these right here.